Hey again, everybody, it's Dr. David Bell, and welcome back to English 203. Now we begin our transition to the poetry writing half of the semester. Now that you've all written a short story and had your short story workshopped, we're now going to go on to the poetry portion of the semester, and we'll be using this book, In the Palm of Your Hand, by Steve Kowit. I just want to begin by talking about the first couple things that Kowit has written in the book that you read for today, and just some general, thoughts about the writing of poetry in this class. And first of all, the poetry writing, the idea behind the poetry writing is not going to be vastly different from the fiction writing part. The only real difference will be that the assignments are going to come from the book, and the assignments are a little more structured in a way than the short story assignment was. But other than that, it's the same idea. And Kowit gets into some of these ideas in the foreword and the part of the book at the beginning called A Few Words Before Getting Started. And I just want to touch on those just because I think there are some useful things in there, not just for this class, but for all writing and any other creative endeavor you might start down the road for, right? So the first thing he talks about in the foreword, and I think I talked about this with fiction writing. If I didn't, it's worth noting here, that the best poetry, the best writing of any kind, comes out of some kind of discomfort for the person who is writing it. That if you simply write about things that are easy for you to think about or easy for the reader to think about, then you're probably not going to create things that are that dynamic. The best writing usually comes from some form of discomfort on the part of the writer. Now, that can be extreme discomfort, like something horrible happened to you in your childhood or whatever. It can also be relatively mundane discomfort. I mean, I think I talked about this in the fiction writing part, but, think about like a television show, a sitcom. Sometimes the reason we laugh at people on sitcoms or TV shows when they get into an awkward situation, like, they end up, on a blind date with someone they don't want to be on a blind date with or whatever. Part of the reason we laugh is discomfort. Is a feeling of like, I'm so glad that's not me, but I can relate to that situation, that uncomfortable situation that person is in. Or maybe you see it and you think to yourself, yeah, I've been in a similar weird, uncomfortable situation, so I can relate to what they're going through. That's basically what writing is tapping into something awkward, weird, uncomfortable that you've experienced and trying to share it with other people. And then other people can see it, and either they recognize the discomfort that you're feeling, or they see themselves in the discomfort that you're feeling and say, yeah, I know exactly how you feel. I've been in that boat before. That's kind of what Kowit is talking about in the foreword of the book. That you want to tap into the things that are uncomfortable for you and difficult for you, and then write about them. Again, this is not to say this is not therapy. You don't have to get into all your deep, dark secrets. And when you write poetry or fiction, you're engaging in metaphor. You're finding a representative way to talk about things that might really have happened to you, not directly what things that have really happened to you. But I think he's encouraging you, and I would encourage you, to think about the things that are just a little uncomfortable or awkward and write about them. You may think like, oh, I don't have a ton of life experience to draw on, but the fact of the matter is, if you've been through life at all, if you've been to school and you have a family, or you've been in relationships or whatever, that's enough to write about for the rest of your life, even if you're only 18, 19, 20 years old. So I think that's what Kowit is encouraging you to do in that foreword. Then the other part of this is a few words before getting started. He talks about feeling comfortable allowing yourself to struggle with writing a little bit. I think sometimes there's a misunderstanding about writing, that writing will be easy. And I think the reason we think writing will be easy, or at least creative writing will be easy, is because everybody knows how to write. How to pick up a pen, you know how to write. Chances are you've been writing stuff most of your life, right? You were writing papers, you were writing notes, you're writing letters, you're sending texts, you're writing all the time. So there's this kind of impression of like, well, writing creatively should be easy. I'm just like sitting down and writing. But there aren't other art forms where we would think that. If you took music lessons when you were a kid or at some time in your life, you probably didn't sit down and think like, wow, I'm going to sit down at the piano for the first time and I'm going to be a concert master who can play, Bach's concerto in D minor perfectly. No, you didn't think that when you started taking music lessons. First, you have to learn the notes and you have to learn your scales and you have to like learn to play Farmer in the Dell and whatever. And then you work your way up to playing more complex pieces of music. The same is true with writing. You're not going to necessarily sit down and just like immediately write the greatest poem that's ever been written. I would say if you tap into something real, you can strike gold and come up with something that's really good and really compelling pretty quickly. But again, no one's expecting you to write a perfect poem or a poem that's going to be published in a great magazine or whatever right now. So allow yourself the opportunity to learn and to struggle a little bit as you go along, right? And the other thing that he talks about in that part of the book is getting past self-consciousness. That the reason that people sometimes struggle with writing is because they want to write about those things that are uncomfortable, but they worry like, well, what will people think of me? What will mom and dad think of me? What will my friends think of me if I express this thing? He's saying you've got to let yourself get past that self-consciousness, that feeling of awkwardness about writing, because that's the way you're going to let it all hang out, and you're going to tap into the real emotions where you're going to find the good stuff that you want to write about and other people are going to want to read about. So that's just kind of like a preface to the things we're going to do with poetry. Something for you to start to think about in these coming days before we get to the point of actually reading and writing the poems. Start to kind of get yourself in that mindset of letting go of your self-consciousness a little bit, if you can, and figure out the things you want to write about and the things that are most important to you. So anyway, that's the beginning of the Steve Kowit book. Thanks for stopping by, and I will see you next time.